Welcome back to another episode of Two in the Cooler. Folks, thank you guys so much for listening, subscribing to the YouTube, following us on Instagram. We really appreciate you guys doing all that stuff. And if you want to support the show even further, the best way to do that, check out the merch, okay? It's at snackspot.se/creator/teespring.com. The link is going to be in this episode description and in our Instagram bio. We've got hoodies, t-shirts. I want to say you're going to be needing the t-shirts soon, but it's freezing in Buffalo today, and it's supposedly spring. I heard a rumor about that. We've also got mugs, pint glasses, fanny packs, whatever you're looking for. This is top quality stuff, folks, okay? I'm talking Target quality merchandise, okay? I would not skimp out on the merchandise for you guys. We've got merch not just from this show, but also from Schemin' and Dreamin' with Ben and Jake, the other show that we produce right here. They just had some new stuff go up on the website that's actually really cool. So be sure to check that stuff out. Do yourself a favor, get something that's going to make you look good and feel good. Folks, why make life harder on yourself by going and spending all this time at the grocery store, okay? The parking lot is a nightmare, and then you get inside, and it's just a maze of products, people banging their carts into each other. Why put yourself through that? And it's even worse when you finally head home, you pull into the driveway, and you realize you forgot that one necessary item. What are you going to do? Turn back around and go back to the grocery store? No, you don't need to, because you can just use Instacart. With Instacart, you can get not just groceries, but some of your favorite products from some of your favorite local stores delivered right to your front door in as little as 1 hour. You can avoid the grocery store altogether. And the best part is, right now, Two in the Cooler listeners get free delivery on their first order of $10 or more. All you got to do is spend $10 and Instacart will deliver whatever you're looking for right to your house in as little as 1 hour. All you have to do is hit the link in this episode description, get yourself that deal, start using Instacart today. And if you're interested in advertising on this show or our twin show, Schemin' and Dreamin', email snackspotsports@gmail.com for details on how you can start reaching thousands of listeners in the Buffalo area and beyond. Podcast advertising is becoming a huge, huge part of advertising in general. Massive companies like State Farm, Tropicana, McDonald's advertising on podcasts, that's insane. But the reason that they do that is because they know it works. My problem with it is that with those big companies coming in, it doesn't leave enough room for smaller local businesses to get in on the action. But that's where we come in, okay? That's what we do here. So if you're interested in learning more about all the benefits to podcast advertising, again, hit us up, email us at snackspotsports@gmail.com.
Close off.
Boom. And that means it's time to start the show.
Yeah, that was horrible. Just cut that. We'll start 30 seconds from now.
And 1, 2, and okay. Felicia, we really appreciate you being here. It's always fun sitting here in the beginning, just like before we start recording, just like shooting the shit and
I'm
stuff.
surprised more people haven't left before we actually started recording.
I thought about it.
Yeah.
I'm kind of surprised at that too, honestly.
Yeah, because nothing gets accomplished. It actually just prolongs the inevitable, which is us starting the show.
But, like we said, I really appreciate you coming on. Especially, so you do these things on for Sneak Vibing, the Mental Health Mondays, which is where I first started seeing you. And those are such a great... I love them. I really, really love them. They oftentimes, they let me know what day it is. But also, I've found myself, when I watch them, it really, helps remind me of a lot of stuff that, sometimes gets pushed to the back of your head. As far as mental health goes, but you always relate it to a song, or that's what you've been doing with them lately. Have mental health and music always gone hand in hand together to you? When did you really start exploring that?
Man, that's a wild question. When did I start exploring that? I guess music has always been there. I can remember being 4 or 5, and this was 1994, and we had those big ass video cameras, those camcorders, and I would set that down on a chair and have this body mirror behind the chair, and then whatever was playing on the radio, I would just dance and vibe out to. And then I think I found out what mental health was, like 7th or 8th grade in health class maybe, but like I didn't really understand the concept of wellness and conceptualizing the fact that music is such like a prominent and default coping mechanism for me until I was like in my early 20s, because these aren't like things that are taught, you know? And that I was like, oh yeah, I do that with music. I come home every night after work and like, but I like spent like $300 on studio speakers with the subwoofer and everything because I wanted that clear sound. Like, it's just, I mean, I think music is the universal language that everyone can sort of relate to.
Interesting. That does. In one of the like first mental health Mondays that you did, you talked about this study where because a lot of like I hear a lot of people when they're sad, they'll listen to like sad music.
Yeah.
And what that study said was really, really interesting about how people who, when they're sad, listen to sad music, they seem, they're more open to experiences and things like that?
Yes, yep, which is one of the character traits of emotional intelligence. The more open to new experiences that you are, the less rigid you are, right? Like your comfort zone's pretty broad and you're open to it, you're curious, you're optimistic. That's a sign of emotional intelligence. And so what the research was saying was that the fact that that was there for these people who chose to go listen to sad music or angry music when their mood matched that emotion, that's a sign of emotional intelligence. And that is coping. It is coping. It's catharsis.
Oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense because it's a way of facing the problem directly.
In a healthy way, just like punching a punching bag. You know what I mean? Like you're angry, you're punching that punching bag, but that is considered a healthy way to let out that energy. And that's what emotions are. It's just entropy, you know? And we have to get back down to baseline at some point. Like our body's always, in our mind, always working to go back to homeostasis. And everyone's homeostasis is different.
God, I love that word.
Homeostasis.
That's one of my favorite words.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
It's a big one.
It's just so like just because like, God, I haven't defined that word since like high school. But
can you define it for us right now?
It's fuck. It's it's like it's your good spot.
Yeah, I'll take it.
You're taking care of
good
stuff,
spot.
right? Yeah. It's your good spot. It's homeostasis.
Yeah.
Mark that down. That's going in the textbooks.
Yeah.
Will you actually turn my headphones down just a little bit more, please, Emily? Sorry. I'm yelling at myself.
Yeah, me too. I like it.
Me too. I like it too.
Mm-hmm.
It's comforting.
Yeah, this is me hearing my own voice is my homeostasis.
Yeah. So you notice we don't have any mirrors in this room.
I would never be able to
would
record.
just be talking to them the whole time instead of whoever was sitting with us.
Hey.
But so explaining the sad music like that makes a lot of sense. I might have to try it. It's a little too low, Emily. Sorry.
Oh, come on.
I know. Look,
here's what I'll say.
I'm sorry.
Out your
I'm a real diva.
Yeah. No, I have never thought of this in any type of like critical thinking manner, just as far as actually doing it. But listening to sad music when you're sad, and you explained it much better than I would, but the way that I would say I think of it is like it just allows you to be sad. Like you're just like, yeah, I'm gonna be sad. Fuck it. Like I'm just gonna do some sad shit. It's not like trying to force yourself out of a sad mood by doing something that you don't want to do, which prolongs the inevitable, which is you being sad. Perfect. You're just like, I'm just gonna dive head first at this sadness and just soak it all in.
Yes.
Get a good cry.
It gives you the permission to feel what you're feeling.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm already learning. Like I'm already thinking about things differently now. Because when I, like usually, I don't know if I do that. I feel like usually when I feel sad, sometimes I will listen to something a little more upbeat.
You know the song Iris,
but it doesn't
by the
necessarily
Goo Goo Dolls?
help. Yeah, that's like their most famous one, isn't it?
Play that shit.
With the violins.
Play that shit.
How
when
does
you're
that
sad.
one go? Is that the one?
That's the one that's like, this. Don't make me do this.
You can just say the words.
No,
you don't
I'm
have
trying to
sing
think
it.
of them.
Everybody wants you to sing it, but you don't have to.
You know when you hear, when you're thinking of a song,
is that the one that's
can't.
like, and I don't want the whole...
Yeah.
The world to see me.
I heard that song. I heard that song
I'm gonna listen to
today,
that song when
and
I
I
leave
was
here.
like, oh
Banger.
my God.
They're coming.
Sixth grade Andrew, like that song, like just looking out the window to that song, like that's a big look out the window song.
They're
for
coming to
people.
Buffalo
Yes.
pretty soon, I think.
Very nice.
Yeah, I might go just to see that song.
Have a good cry.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Just I fucking love that song. That song fires me up though.
I'm glad you're coming around. I'm glad you're coming on the show, especially at this time, because, you know, I mean, it's really cold today, but we've had a couple of warmer days like earlier this week and stuff. And I think seasonal affective disorder, people talk about that a lot, I feel like, especially in the last couple of years when it comes to winter. But I feel like anytime the seasons change, I feel myself at least getting like a little bit down. But it doesn't get talked enough. Or that doesn't get, like, people mainly focus on winter and feeling bad because it's gray outside. But it seems like, it seems natural that whenever a season shifts, even if it's like, you know, summer to fall, because I love fall, but or like spring to summer, like I'm feeling it now, like winter to spring, like things are melting and stuff, but just that change, I feel like brings out something in people. Is that, am I right there?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
100%. People live in systems. Like, we have at least 4 systems, and one of the outside systems that we live in is the geographical location, the weather at the time. Like, this also includes like our cultural and religious and socioeconomic status, and like all of those things play a part. And also your body directly affects your mind and vice versa too. Like, that's very, I feel like it is talked about, especially in Buffalo, the SAD. But then again, like, I also feel like a lot of depression goes untreated because it's sort of masked as like, oh, it's seasonal. Like, I have the blues. But if you know you have the blues at every year, every time it starts to get
15 years
dark
of the
at
blues
5 o'clock
is-
at night,
yeah.
you got to do some preparation during the other parts of the year for that. Like, get ready for hibernation, go to therapy, learn coping skills, learn how to create a routine, learn how to create structure, and shift your sleep-wake cycle. Like, all of those things take daily practice, and then it compounds onto itself. So, like, it's Buffalo, so come October, when winter hits, like, you're good. You're not going to be okay, but it's going to be okay.
I think it's really hard for people to... I mean, obviously it's hard for people to face that, but I think especially when... Because, you know, the thing about depression that I think people are starting to realize is that sometimes there are moments where you're not feeling it. And you do feel good. And so it's... I guess sometimes you want to believe that, like, that's what you're really feeling, as opposed to facing the fact that you are actually, like, that's just kind of, for whatever reason, a small spark, but it's not fixing the bigger problem.
Yeah, and that is because of a message that has been internalized from another part of the systems that we develop and live in, which is the stigma on mental health and also diagnoses. Like, I don't, as a graduate student in a clinical mental health program and as a life coach, like, I do not like diagnostic language because it's cold, it's critical, it's clinical, and it comes from a system that was designed to leave certain people out and create barriers to access to treatment. So I can understand why someone would be put off or scared by the thought of, I have depression, because one, depression is fluid. It's not something you are, it's not something you have, it's something you're feeling and experiencing. And it doesn't have to be called depression in order for you to get the help that you need. It doesn't. Like, that is a weird unspoken rule that somehow we've all internalized because of the healthcare system and the mental health care system. Not all the time, not 100%, but like, yeah. If you walk outside your door and you know that the majority of people around you are going to try to cheer you up when you look sad and feel uncomfortable even because you're not like able to pick yourself up or be picked up, and then you feel that and you're learning like, oh, it's not okay to be vulnerable. It's not okay to be this way. I have to scale it back. And like that's there 100%. I think less so in Gen Z and millennials, but yeah.
I had never thought of that particular, like what you just said, like trying to, well, I guess the way it sounds, so trying to pick somebody up too aggressively when they're not feeling that it's time to be picked up will actually cause
Like-
them to, feel worse in the future because they then feel like they can't express it because they don't want to have you try to pick
or make
them up.
people feel uncomfortable or
Yeah.
anything like
Right.
that.
Like toxic positivity.
Yeah.
And that's a lot. Like, I see a lot of these Instagram accounts that have like mad followers and TikTok accounts that have mad followers, mad viewers. And it's imbued with like toxic positivity, white like based and white like owned, I guess, coming from a white perspective of like, oh, if you meditate twice a day for 10 minutes at a time, like your depression will be cured. Like you're not doing something enough. Something is wrong. You're lazy. Something's wrong with you. And that's why you feel that way. So just get with this mindset and get with this positivity and start seeing things this way. And it's like, no, they can't. I can't. Like, I'm experiencing a depressive episode and I am too low, and these things that are making me feel low might be poverty. It might be my mom just died. It might be I suffered childhood abuse and I never processed it. Like, don't go out there on a platform and tell people like, oh yeah, just like meditating and like good belly breaths like will cure your depression, because it's not. These are systems deep issues. And I think that people need to start seeing that more.
That's another thing, too, that you touched on is, like, and I focused on this a bunch a couple years back, and it was, like, it was actually in a leadership class that I was taking, and one of the things we were looking at was, like, how productivity doesn't equal self-worth, right? And that was like, oh, because a lot of people, when they do feel like, oh, like today, when you wake up and you're just like, oh, today just feels like one of those days, and you're like, after, you start to realize that you do that, you're like, well, instead of having one of those days, let's get up, let's go, go to the gym, go to the grocery store, let's try to do all this stuff. But then by the time it's over, one, you're probably miserable doing it, and by the time you get home, you're just ready to sleep for 17 hours anyway. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it was like, oh, you know what? Especially, and I found this too, like, right when I graduated, and it's like, okay, you graduate college, and you're like, okay, what do you do now, right? Like, you have to, I'm like, well, I can't, I'm not in college anymore. I can't sleep until 2 p.m. I can't lay around all day. I can't do nothing. Like, I have to get up and do something, or else I start to feel down. Well, it's like, okay, well, getting up and forcing yourself to do something every day, I'm not saying it's always a bad thing, but like, you have to get yourself to the point where you want to get up and do something, not you feel like you have to get up and do something, because if you're not, you're going to feel shitty about yourself.
Yeah. And most of the time in situations like that, you're going to feel shitty about yourself because other people are judging you.
Yeah. And that's a big thing too. But that's I think something that even people that will never admit, and I mean, there are people that aren't like this, but it's so hard, especially now, to be somebody who isn't at least remotely concerned, you know, and it's not saying that people always act because of that way. Like some people, even if they are concerned, are able to kind of push through it, but about, you know, the way that they're viewed and the way that people around them see them. And, and, you know, the people that they're close to even, right? The people like, whether it's like a relationship, your best friends, your family, stuff like that. And if you're going to focus, you know, like it's cliche, but, you know, those people are supposed to be the people around you because they're the ones that are supposed to, you know, actually like being around the person that you are. So what's the point in trying to control the way that you act, look, feel around them?
Yes.
Goes back, I guess, to what you were saying too about the way that, you know, people try to bring, you know, toxic positivity was what you called it.
Yeah, no, I really like what you said, the point you made about that most people, or basically everybody, like, I just want to also affirm what you just said, do care about, at least at the minimum, how their loved ones view them. And that's because we're social creatures biologically. Like, socialization is a survival need. And when it's not met, you know, we are lacking dopamine. We're not getting our dopamine from social interactions, from positive and healthy social interactions. And that's a part of the reason why depression can be so chronic, because you're isolating yourself and doing other behaviors that really, like, just kind of feel like a trap. And they also feel good and safe, though, in the moment and in the short term, but in the long term, it keeps you there. And that's why depression can be so chronic sometimes.
Yeah.
So I think, like, psychoeducation is so important, just to mainstream these facts about dopamine and about normalizing the human experience, because we're all pretty much working with the same, like, hardwire as fucking cavemen. Like, our brain is not getting these, like, monthly upgrades like our fucking phone is. So we're working with just, like, very simple, archaic hardwire, which is our brain. And I think, like, if we can just normalize that, this is our brain, like, this is the shit that we have to work with, and let's make it work. You're not crazy because you're depressed or have a personality disorder, which, by the way, like, these diagnoses, like the DSM-5 and all of that.
What is the DSM-5?
The DSM-5 is the diagnostic manual.
Gotcha.
So it has all of the mental health diagnoses. Yeah. And it's in its 5th edition, and it's about to be updated soon, within the next couple of years, I'm assuming. And these are, again, like, diagnoses built off of research that comes from data from not a diverse pool of sample sizes. It's mostly white, middle class, majority men, and that's the data that these research studies are pulling from in order to be like, oh, okay, this set of criteria is schizophrenia, this set of criteria is depression. And that doesn't take into account, like, any of the other people in this world, in this country, that are having similar symptoms but have different lived experiences. And so I don't really like to validate, or even, like, validate diagnostic clinical language, because it's always changing and it's biased. Yeah.
It's going, yes, so sticking with that, sorry, you're giving us a lot to think about. It's really interesting.
You got this look on your face. Yeah, you got
really
you got a look on your face. Yeah. it's not, maybe switch it up a little bit. Yeah.
Switch up the look on my face?
Yeah.
Just sounds like toxic positivity to me, Matthew. That's pretty fucked up of you to say to me right now.
Toxic.
That's actually messed up. Yeah, that's just general.
The way that your face looks, just switch it, is what I was trying to get at. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Careless Whisper by George Michael?
Yeah.
That's the one. But it's you know, problems up here, they're not like problems anywhere else in the body. Like if somebody, like if you get a cut on your arm or something, anybody who gets a similar cut on their arm, they know, okay, well, we'll just stitch it up and that's it. Yeah, there's no way. It's not a good idea to try and put
like a lobotomy. Yeah, there you go. That's what you're getting at. Which they don't do as far as I know anymore. Just in movies. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but it's not a good idea to approach mental health the same way as physical health. And it seems like just because that's the way research is done across the board, basically, that's what they're trying to do with mental health, or at least that's what it's been for decades.
I mean, I want you to say more, because a good analogy to use in order to normalize mental health is ironically comparing it to getting treatment for something physical. Like the saying is like, oh, if you have a broken leg, like you're gonna go to the doctor and get a cast so you can walk on it again. If you have an emotional blockage or you're struggling with something internally, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, you're gonna go get help, because how can you teach yourself something you don't know how to do?
Yeah. I think that's where a lot of people, I think, get lost, is that they're just not sure how to take care of it. Maybe they feel like, because it's such a personal problem, and you feel it like right here. So sometimes I think when people feel that way, they think, well, if this is where the problem is, then it's also on me to find the solution myself, which is like the worst thing you can do, I imagine.
Well, that's actually called rugged individualism, and that's a white Eurocentric value that comes from the majority group, which is white people. We're a part of the group that has the most power, so our biases and our perspective has the biggest voice, loudest voice, and so we're the ones putting out the DSM. We're the ones putting words to ideas and feelings and saying, this is what the criteria is. But one of the values of the majority group is rugged individualism, like pull yourself up by your bootstraps mentality. And other cultures, other parts of the world have like a collectivist value system. And we're seeing people helping people and valuing teamwork instead of like rugged individualism, which actually does so much more for the psyche than telling yourself, I need to fix this myself. Because you're right. You're absolutely on point with that.
So I have a question, and it kind of ties into what you were just saying, like that pull yourself up by the bootstrap mentality. So, and this is, not that you have an answer to this or the right answer, but
yeah, put it out there.
Like, so where does at what point can you draw a line? And I'll kind of give you like a scenario, like a made up one. Like, it's, as people that are, as anybody who's a mental health advocate, or at least, recognizes it, right? Or has ever dealt with it, they know that, it's difficult. And when somebody's in a position where they, are feeling some type of way, there's not always much that, can be done except for let that kind of play out. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, the world goes on around you, which can be part of the reason it's tough to get out. But, especially when you get older and we talked about you graduate from college, and now you're like, okay, well, now I have to live on my own and survive. And, if you're having a bad day, you can't just say, in most places, you can't just say, oh, I'm having a bad day, I can't, work, I can't cook, I can't take care of anything else, So at what point does, I guess it doesn't have to be a point, but how can people in that sense, when maybe their only option, that morning is to help themselves, and say, you know what, like, I have to get up and do this, and I can get up and do this, and kind of that route. Like, what is, so, like, how do you go about that? Where does that line, I don't like to call it a line, because it sounds like when you bring it up, when I bring it up, it sounds like I am saying, like, pick yourself up and get out there and do it, which is not what I'm saying.
I hear you.
And it's like, you know, at some point you have to get up and you have to, you know, provide for yourself and take care of yourself.
Yeah, the two are existing at the same time.
Yeah.
Right? Exactly. And that's a part of being in this, like, you're in the middle. There's your first circle, which is, like, your immediate environment. Then the next layer is, like, the interactions between all your environments, like home and work, and all of those other environments that you're in. And then outside of that, you're also being influenced by indirect environments interacting with your environment. So, like, your spouse's workplace. And let's say it's a toxic, like, workplace at your spouse's work. And he comes home mad stressed and he takes it out on you. That directly affects you. The other layer of that is the fact that, like, we are in late stage capitalism, and, like, we, for the most part, all have to go to work every single day, and we have to do things to survive. Like, we can't stop just because we want to. And I hear what you're saying, like, so at that point, what do you do? I think that there is no one-size solution, like one-size-fits-all answer to that question, but I think first and foremost, it's knowing what's happening inside of you, like the ability to identify what's going on, because that is what leads a lot of confusion and more suffering for people. Like, at least for me, before I knew how to identify my feelings, before I had the vocabulary I have other than the words angry, sad, upset, pissed off, like, there really wasn't a big wheel of emotions for me to choose from in my brain. And I didn't know what was going on, and so I felt bad about myself. I internalized what, like, was going on, because I thought, like, well, something must be wrong with me, and I just have to ignore it. But, like, a broken leg, like, if the more you ignore it, the worse it becomes. And so, not to say that there is no solution, but sometimes bottoming out and not going to work that day, right, and, like, having that breakdown, sometimes that's what gets people to say, oh my God, okay, I can't do this by myself.
Yeah.
I need help.
Yeah. And the reason that I think about that a lot, too, and, like, for me, it ties back to sports, is especially over the past probably 2 years, you've seen a lot of athletes, you know, come out publicly and either step away, whatever, take time for themselves because they say they need that. And mental health in sports is a whole different thing that I'll probably ask you about after this. But, you know, Simone Biles was a big one, right?
Yeah.
When she does it, and it seemed like the whole world is divided, right? Because there's people that are like, oh, we understand the mental health aspect of it. And then there's the other side of, you know, you're on this platform, pick yourself up by your bootstraps and get going. Now, and I'll tell you this, like, I was very conflicted by the whole thing.
Okay.
And it had nothing to do with, like, from an athletic perspective, like, oh, like, you're an athlete, you should play. Well, that wasn't what it was. The reason that I was conflicted about it was because of what I just asked you about. Like, I'm like, okay, it's great that she's doing this. Like, she's being open about it. No problem. She needs that time. But the thing that I thought about it was, like, that's really good for her, but not everybody can do that. Not everybody, and that's why I brought it up, right? Not everybody can say, like, oh, I'm just going to step back from this for 2 months, right? Mm-hmm. Because most people aren't Simone Biles, right? Most people aren't gold medal Olympic athletes that have $1 million sponsorship deals. And that has nothing to do with, like, that has nothing to do with her mental health. I'm just saying she, at the time, was lucky enough to where, you know, she was fortunate enough because of work that she's put in to have the opportunity to say, hey, I can step away and still live my life very comfortably, right? There's not everybody that has that opportunity. So that's why I ask about it. And that's what was you know, I was conflicted about the whole thing. Is like, and you said it, sometimes you need to hit rock bottom, and I understand that too, but it's like, I wish that we could, and I have no clue. People might be talking about this. And I think it to myself when I'm thinking like, okay, what do I do today, right? Mm-hmm. I think like, I wish there was a way that we could, do it all at once. And I don't mean just like make it happen in a day, but I mean, like understand it, be okay with it, and make it happen without, and like try to, learn about what's going on in your head. Because I know I'm kind of all over the place now, but you said it too when you said, having an understanding. Like I 100% agree with that. Like when you start to take notice to what's going on and why you're feeling this way, and you said, you only had a select few words. And when you start to think like, okay, like, yeah, I feel this way right now, and I feel this way multiple times, over the course of whatever, and you start to recognize like, okay, I'm feeling kind of the same, but this is why I'm feeling that way, right? So, okay, maybe this one's not because I'm angry at, the car accident I just watched that made me late to work, but maybe I'm really, whatever other type of emotion, but it starts to all feel the same, and that's when it becomes frustrating. If you can start to understand what goes on in your head and what you feel and why you're feeling it, why you're getting angry, why you're feeling so anxious, like it doesn't stop it by any means, but it makes it easier to, like, anxiety is the one that I'll use in this example. Like, when I was playing hockey, I never noticed that I was like a very like stressed out, like anxiety driven person. Mm-hmm. But the reason that I never noticed that was because I figured out how to combat it through routine, right? Like and I think this is a lot of athletes, right? Especially hockey players. They talk about a lot with like superstitions and stuff. Like I was very much like that. I was at the rink the same time. I was doing everything the same way. I was eating the same food. I was, from the moment I woke up to the moment I went to sleep, I was doing the same things. And if I didn't, it would drive me up a wall. I'd be like, I'm going to play horrible tonight. And so fast forward to, and I never noticed it because what I did, and it didn't feel like that at the time because it was like, oh, well, the reason that I'm doing all these things so repetitively is because I'm going to do the same thing every day, and I have to be as good as it was yesterday, if not better, so I have to continue to do the same thing, right? And then you graduate, you stop playing hockey, and it's like, okay, well, now I start feeling like this like more and more often, and I don't know why. And it's like, okay, well, it's because you woke up today and you didn't have a plan. And it's like, okay, well, yeah, so I can have a plan, but at the same time, isn't there a way to make you feel like you don't need to always have a plan, right? Like, how do you get to that point? But when you start to feel like, oh shit, like when I start to feel like that, oh shit, I'm stressed out. I have this, and this to do, but I haven't, got things correctly. If I don't leave if you don't leave your house with the right things in your pocket, you're like, oh shit, like today is going to be a shitty day. Okay, well, how do you get yourself to the point where, it's good that you recognize that now. I'll say me. It's good that I recognize it now, and it's good that I know how to, I guess make myself feel better in the time. But for how long are you going to go where if you don't do this same set of things, you're going to feel that way? Like eventually you have to break that pattern, right? So how do you get there? So you recognize it, and you're like, okay, at least I know why I'm doing this, so that when I start to feel a certain type of way, you can almost like rationalize it to yourself. But what's the next step? And I'm not, that's a general, like, that's seriously a question that, like, it's something that goes through my mind, and I'm sure it goes through other people's minds, right?
Yeah, I mean, you touched on so many
I went
things.
off on a little rant there, sorry.
Thank you for taking space.
We talked just a little bit more into the mic, Felicia.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, just going back.
Yeah, there was like 14 points.
I'm going to put Simone Biles on a shelf for now. But going back to the music, right? Like, figuring out and knowing what it is that soothes you, that brings you peace, that makes you feel joy, that sparks that childish play part of us. Those are things that people can do. Like, I used to listen to on my way to work, like every single morning. I had a very, very stressful job. I was in charge of a lot, and it was very high stakes. And I loved what I did for a very long time, but it was extremely stressful. And one of the things that I did just to make myself feel better on the way to work was listen to music and blast that music and like visualize where I'd rather be while that song is playing. Almost like a music video in my own mind, like just like fantasizing and like playing with my imagination, also while paying attention to the road. But like, right. Like, but these are things that build upon itself. I'm not going to sit here and say like, oh, if you just all of a sudden wait until you're at the point where like your hand's on the doorknob to leave for work and you can't because you're just so like distraught, whatever that looks like, that's not the day to start doing these things because it's too late. Like you said earlier, you have to feel your feelings. You have to let them out in order to get back to homeostasis. So you also touched on a really good point about routine. Like, not bringing it to the extreme that you did and you identified that was out of your anxiety, but structure and routine, even on the days you don't have stuff to do, you're getting up naturally at the same time. You're meditating or whatever it is that you have created like as part of your morning routine to do. That's like step number one I do with my clients as a life coach. And I love when my clients are in therapy because now I get to work at the unhealthy habits that were learned like before that person sought therapy. And they're working with their therapist, undoing those internal, like deep-seated negative self-beliefs or whatever it is, traumas. And I'm over here on the surface level, the behavioral level, helping them re-habitualize healthier patterns of behavior and unlearn unhealthy patterns of behavior. And that can look like building a night and morning routine, never going more than 2 weeks without doing your laundry and picking a day to do your laundry. And like, what people don't realize about a life coach is, or at least for me as a life coach, I'm there to coach you in real time. And that looks like texting me, calling me, emailing me. And like I have an agreement, my clients know, like if I don't answer, something's going on, like I'm doing something, but I will get back to you within like hours. So just hang tight. Like if it's an emergency, do not call or text me because you need emergency type level like care. But like we're working on and identifying problems that are arising in someone's day-to-day life. And like let's just take like work, because we've been talking about work. So like work-life balance. Okay, like take lunch. Take your 30 minutes lunch, not at your desk, leave work, go to a place, like if you are by a park, if not, go to your car and listen to a podcast or whatever it is. Like take your lunch, take that time away from work. And a lot of people actually like have a really hard time doing that because of the high expectations put on us to be very, very, very productive and this maladaptive self-belief that society has internalized in us that like our work ethic is directly tied to our self-worth, but it's not. So when clients are sitting there and it's 12 o'clock and that's their lunchtime and they know that their homework for the week is to get into their car and eat their lunch like they've agreed to do, but they can't and they're struggling with exactly what we've talked about in session, that's when they text me. Hey, Falisha, like I'm doing the thing. I know, like I said I was going to do this, but for some reason I'm really struggling. Okay, remember the coping skills we talked about in session. What is it exactly that you're experiencing so that I can be there in live time to figure it out. Like, is this with them? And they're the expert, not me. I'm just asking questions and helping them along through this process. Because these are things, like, again, like, you cannot teach yourself what you don't know. And it does take live time, like, as it's happening, assistance to unlearn these things because they're habits. So I don't know if that answered your question, but there is a lot of internal work that has to be done regardless of where these problems are coming from.
Yeah.
What kind of terms or skills, whatever, do you teach your clients to help them better express what they're feeling to themselves, but also to you in those moments? That, are really let you know specifically, get a good idea of what is actually going on with them right then.
That is up to the client. Like, I treat my clients as individuals, and it's very collaborative in nature. Like, coaching is just very, very collaborative, but also me as a person, like, like I said, like, I don't like to use that language, and I'm also just not going to assume that what I think of as sad is what the other person thinks of. So that's where that motivational interviewing questioning type dialogue comes in, and I'm asking, well, what does sad look like for you? What's happening when you're sad? Is it the same thing? Is there a pattern of things, or is it different all the time? Is it a certain type of day? Like, what's going on before, during, and after? And just really, like, trying to get as much data. That's a word I use with all my clients, data, especially in the beginning, trying to get as much data about whatever it is they're coming to coaching for as possible.
Yeah. And it's really, it's interesting because, and data, I would assume, like when you say data, it's not data that most people are necessarily thinking it is, right? It's understanding these people's personalities, right? Like,
it can be, but also we do, a lot of the time there's homework because it's the data taking place in between sessions, and there's trackers.
Yeah.
Like, I'll give them like a mood tracker, coping skills tracker, avoidance log. What situations are you avoiding and putting off if you're coming to me for that? Like, that's data.
Yeah. Well, yeah. That never, yeah.
Yeah, it's very behavioral based, my type of coaching. And it's interesting because I go off of the basis that, like, we're going to talk about and learn the things that school was supposed to teach you but didn't. And, like, I learned the hard way, so you don't have to. And that's just really where I come at it, because I just figured, like, I'm a millennial, and every single millennial I know is so unprepared. And that's self-proclaimed. And they feel shortchanged, myself included. So I just give the power back to myself by learning as much as I possibly can about how to make this as manageable as possible.
That's, sorry, not to cut you off,
No,
Andy, but that's something that's really interesting that you said, is like lack of preparation, right? Like, a lot of people feel unprepared. And I had actually already, thought to, at some point in this episode, ask you, does it feel, or do you see, like, there's an increase in people, who are willing to, well, I don't want to say willing to admit, but do you think, if you had the numbers, like if you had, a study where nobody could lie, right? Like, everybody had to tell the truth. Like, do you think that there's an increase in people that deal with different mental health issues and high stress and stuff like that now than there was even 10 years ago?
Hell yeah.
Okay, so I would agree with that. And I don't know any of the numbers. And part of it probably is, that there is more people talking about it now, but I don't think that that's why. I don't think that it's just because we know more people. I think that it is the raw numbers.
I agree.
So, and I've like had conversations with different people about this before, like just doing stuff, right? Like, you're just having a one-on-one conversation with somebody, and it falls to this, and it's like, why? I wonder why. Like, and I've had all these ideas, and people are like, oh, social media. But there's all these different theories, and I'm sure they all play a part. But that to me seems like a really, really, really core idea. Is like lack of preparation, because again, it goes back to me personally. Like, part of my routine and stuff like that, right, is I need to be prepared. If I feel like I'm about to walk into a situation unprepared, like, I struggle getting into, and I'm like, not struggle is like I'm not gonna go, but I'm on my way there, like palms sweating in the car, like I hope I have everything I need for this whatever I'm about to do, right? And I think that's such like an underlying issue that people don't feel prepared. Like, it's that simple. Like, if you're not, people always say like, like, preparation is a huge part of success, right? Like, if you're, and then I don't mean like, whatever. I just success, like doing whatever, right? Being prepared is a big part of being able to excel at what you're doing. When you don't feel prepared, you're not comfortable going into a situation. I mean, some people are, but those people are, like, you know what I mean? Some people can just go by whatever, with the wind and just be fine doing anything. And they're like, oh, I showed up and I don't have any of the things I need. Like, I'll figure it out. I'm not one of those people. Like, I think that I've thought of it a lot of different ways, but just being prepared in general, like, is the most general term. And it comes, like you said, things at school. Obviously, my brain first goes like, oh, taxes, which is a funny joke because they don't teach you that in school. But
the mitochondria, powerhouse of the cell.
Yeah.
Yep. The classic meme.
Yeah. Cody Lundeen.
Is that a hockey player?
No, Cody Lundeen was his guy.
From the survival show.
Yeah, there was a show I used to watch called Dual Survival. And there's this guy named Cody Lundeen. Shout out to all my friends. I still talk about, I don't think that show's been on for years. And I talk about Cody Lundeen at least once a week. Like, he was a survival expert, like a wilderness survival expert. And he hadn't lived in a structure for like 17 years. And he hadn't worn, like, he would make his own, He lived in the desert in like a rock thing that he built in like Arizona or something. That was his house. That was his address, his mailing address. But he hadn't worn shoes in like 30 years.
Wow.
And he said that he could, and they would, do this survival show, and they'd be in like Antarctica, Alaska, and he would wear wool socks when it was really, really cold. But I mean, just wool socks. They weren't waterproof or anything. And he said that the way that he was able to do it was from not wearing shoes for so long. He was able to build up the mitochondria in his feet. And I always used to love that saying. Like whenever we would do anything, I'd be like, your mitochondria just aren't strong enough in your feet. Like, it's that simple. Like, if you trained your mitochondria in your feet, none of this would be happening right now. Yeah. That's all.
Didn't they change the cell, like, anatomy or function?
I don't know. Plants are square. Animals are circle. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Sad easy.
That's more than what I remember.
Yep.
So.
And also, there's another thing about plants. The cell wall. Cell wall's different.
I know photosynthesis.
Yeah, plants do photosynthesis.
Oh yeah, photosynthesis. Another
Chlorophyll.
excellent word.
Yeah.
Chlorophyll. Shout out to chlorophyll.
Yeah.
I just like that word.
Yeah. It's a great one.
A lot of high IQ sitting at this table. While we're paused, while we're kind of off of the more serious subjects that we've been talking about, let's do the Who Would Win of the Week.
Okay.
Okay, before we dive back into it.
Okay. Quick little intermission.
Yeah.
The Who Would Win of the Week this week is Dr. Phil versus Judge Judy. Pretty good matchup. Yeah. I think that I literally just saw this video of Judge Judy
powerhouses today. Of the cell, by the way.
Two powerhouses. Of daytime television for sure. I just saw this video today of Judge Judy where because she didn't she's insanely rich. Like, she's got a ton of money.
Yeah, she's almost like Oprah rich, I'm pretty sure.
a long time, yeah.
And the thing is, she didn't really start to get successful until she was a little bit older. Mm-hmm. So in this video, that's her sitting there saying, like, if you don't make it in your 20s, you can make it in your 30s. If you don't make it in your 30s, you got to keep going. You can make it in your 40s. And Judge Judy is exactly like Corey LeFou's feet. The mitochondria.
Cody Lundeen.
Cody Lundeen's feet. Exactly what I said. The mitochondria that is Judge Judy has strengthened herself so much more than Dr. Phil has had to throughout his life. He got Oprah, tossed him a little scrap of a show, and he just went running with that.
Yeah.
I do feel like he moves more slowly than Judge Judy. She's fast.
Yes.
She's witty.
Agreed.
She's sharp. She's formidable.
That's an excellent call because Dr. Phil is he's a big guy and Judge
Yeah.
Judy seems like a pretty small woman.
You want to know
Yeah.
what
But
else, too?
I think Dr. Phil he's the slow type of big.
Yeah.
He's not like
well, you want to know what it is?
Yeah.
Dr. Phil beats around the bush a lot.
Yes.
Whereas, like, Judge Judy will
She
call
doesn't-
anybody on their
You're
bullshit.
She
She sees the point. Fastest,
Jugular.
Yeah.
Judge Jugular.
Cut- Cutthroat. She's
fastest
cutthroat.
way to get from point A to point B, Andrew, straight line. Right?
Sure.
Dr. Phil's out here taking the goddamn yellow brick road.
Monologuing.
Yeah, not Judge Judy. Yeah, she's Uber helicoptering. Boop, boop. Dropped off one spot to another. Straight line. Here's the thing, though, is that Dr. Phil, although slow, well, he's big. He's a big guy.
I mean, this is like a typical like David and Goliath, Jack and the Beanstalk situation.
Yeah.
But Judge Judy
Rabbit in the
has
hair.
I was just gonna say.
Or
no,
No,
tortoise
no,
in the
tortoise in the
yeah,
hair.
Rabbit in the hair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good race, though. As long as neither of them take a nap.
But Judge Judy is even more prepared than either of those two because she's also insanely smart. That's the sense that I get.
Well, she's
Well, like you said,
quick-witted.
she's very witty.
She's very quick-witted.
She's also already in a fighting position. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
She's a
she's
scrapper.
among conflict. She's technically the mediator,
Yeah.
but
No matter.
But she's used to dishing it out as well. where
she's surrounded
Yeah.
by it.
Yeah, no matter how fabricated said conflict may be, she is involved in it.
You cannot bullshit her.
Yeah.
She's bullshit.
You can't bullshit the bullshitter.
Can't.
And Dr. Phil is kind of...
He's a bullshitter.
He loves bullshit.
Oh, he literally
rolling
lives
around
in
in it.
bullshit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Big old bowl of bullshit. You want to know who we should have done? Honorable mention would have been Judge Judy versus the girl from Role Models that runs 30 Wings.
Oh, Jane Lynch?
Yeah, but her character in that
character?
movie.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Don't know if you understood that
Any
reference.
Jane Lynch character
Yeah.
would be exactly
Yeah.
like that.
From Glee. She's from Glee.
Sue Summers in Glee.
Oh, I
The
love
she's
her.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. We should
She's
do it.
awesome.
All right. Well,
Glee
That's
really
a
table
tough
that.
one.
Came and went.
That's a tough
Yeah, that's
one.
a really
table
good fight.
that. Well, the problem, this is what happens sometimes when Dr. Phil's getting his ass beat in by Judge
Right.
Judy. If we're like, well,
who could he tag in? Like, who's the one person that could come in and actually
Yeah.
save him in this scenario?
And not many. So, let me just work this out, though. Because there's got to be a way. As you know, there's always a way that Dr. Phil could possibly win this fight.
I was gonna say in the beginning, I could picture them dating.
Yeah, that's
He could seduce her.
probably pretty.
What?
No, I kind of agree with that.
What?
Yeah, he could seduce
I think
her.
you guys are crazy.
I think
no,
that's the
no,
only
no,
way
no.
for him, though.
Judge Judy definitely.
You think that's the kind
JJ.
of guy she goes
Judge,
for?
No,
Judge,
yes,
oh
yes,
yeah,
yes,
Judge
yes.
Judy definitely
She needs a
has,
soft man.
and not no.
If she
listen,
likes
listen,
men,
listen.
I don't know.
I'm not.
think
This is
you're
my
crazy.
thing. No, if you could design a husband for Judge Judy, he would have the classic.
Like
Ring, the classic hair
classic
ring,
oval,
the classic
baldness
oval,
pattern.
yeah, the Jerry Canada as we call it.
Wow.
With mustache, and he wore like, even if he wasn't going to the office every day anymore, he was still wearing like a suit and tie just because that's the way he was raised.
Mustache, maybe, but I feel like that'd be too boring for Judy.
No,
she
that's
needs somebody
She
that
right.
can
needs boring.
Get her level.
That's right
She
up Judy.
needs that
You want to know
balance.
why? You want to know why? Because Judy needs control.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, honestly, not to like
You
king
guys are
shame
making a
Judy,
lot of
but
good
she
points.
definitely whips other people.
I don't know, but I feel
I
like
might agree. Did I take
because
it too
she's
far?
like that outside, like
Maybe
in life,
she does have
might.
a softer core.
But then probably like, wait, we're talking about like sexually, right?
I was
okay,
at the
cool,
time,
cool,
yes.
Cool. Just making sure. That would have been awkward.
Yeah.
But I feel like Dr. Phil, in the same way, might be dominating in bed.
Yeah, he's a submissive man on the outside.
Right.
Yeah, until he gets in the sack. Andrew,
Right.
Yeah. For
So
all of you
they might
picturing
complement
Dr.
each
Phil
other.
and Judge Judy. Yeah. Picture it some more, folks. But at the end of the day, I do think that Judge Judy wins this fight. So I'm going to go
Yeah.
ahead and lock that in.
Yeah, let's lock that in across
Let's
the
go
board.
clean
Judy
on
all the way.
sweep. Judge
Unanimous.
Judy over Dr. Phil. Vote on that on Friday on Instagram. Who would win of the week? Back to Andrew.
So, getting back to Stigma, first of all, where do you think the generational divide started? Where do you think it comes from with the stigma for of mental health? And you said that there seems to be a lot less of it with millennials and Gen Z for sure. What do you think is the difference there between them and then, their parents and stuff?
I definitely think it's the time that we're in, social media and just access to more voices and perspectives all at once. Like boomers and Gen X used to have to go to the library if they wanted to learn something.
Well,
They used to have to take a bus to the library. There's more convenience and less amount of time to have that access now, and I think that gives us like a whole new perspective. I don't think it's just that, but I do think that's a big part of it. And then just how history has gone down, I'm just thinking back to like World War II and the 20s and how all of those things really affect like the soldiers coming home after World War II and the PTSD that most of them had and how that didn't really get processed because there really wasn't a medical system for that or the resources. And that seeps down into the next generation and how their kids are raised and so on and so forth. And that's generational trauma. Now we know that, though. Like Gen Z and millennials are now on TikTok learning what generational trauma is, and they're still teenagers or even kids living in their home. And, I mean, if I knew what that shit was when I was a fucking kid, I would tell my parents. I'd be like, this is generational trauma. And they'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah.
But, like...
I've never read about generational trauma in the Wall Street Journal.
Right. Yeah. So...
Too close to home, kid.
But I agree with that. Like, the way... And I've thought about it, too, in the sense that it feels like going back to when our parents grew up, and you touched on, like, information wasn't so accessible. And it was, things were need to know, right?
Yeah.
It feels like nothing's need to know anymore because anytime you do want to know something, you can just find it out at the snap of your fingers. So when you're in a situation, like, this is the big thing I compare it to, is like, and I'll relate it to, like, a high school kid, right? Like, when you were like going through puberty and self-conscious about the way you looked and whatnot, and like people were whispering by you were always like, are those people talking about me, right? Now, not saying that, so back then I'm sure that happened when people were growing up, but once you get older you realize, like, not everything, you don't need to know everything, right? Some people don't need to know everything. Now, because we feel that we have the ability to, we feel like out of necessity, we need to know everything. So every time we see something going on, we're like, wait, I don't know what's going on there. What's going on there? Like that.
That kind of goes back to the preparation.
Yeah.
Thing.
Like, is that something I should know about? Like, is that concerning me? Do I need to be involved in that? Like, what's happening there? And then it starts to, like, build that, like, that lack of comfortability in situations, right? And then next time, I don't even want to go there. I don't even want to go do what I did that day because when I went there, I felt like this. When the reason that you felt like that wasn't because of what you were doing, it was because of this constant feel that you need to know everything. And it's like, and it's one of those things where probably everybody struggles with in some sense. Like, we don't need to know everything. Like, it was probably better when we didn't have the ability to, right? Like, you don't need to know. Even when things,
that ignorance is bliss saying.
Well, that's what, and it's not for everything. Like, obviously, the technology we have and the information that we can consume is great in a lot of ways, but it starts to build. You start to build you rely on that. Like, I can find out anything whenever I want to, whereas then you have to become comfortable again with being okay with not knowing stuff. And it's like, older generations never had to be comfortable with not knowing things because they didn't have access to them like we do now. Whereas now it's like, again, it's like we're so used to being able to know everything that maybe part of our issue now is we feel like we have to when you don't.
I think what we're seeing developmentally with adolescents in social media, like how you were talking about in school. And when I was in school, like, kids had cell phones, but they were, like, flip phones, and, like, it was, like, 50-50. Like, some kids did, some kids didn't have a cell phone. And so really that situation where you're talking about like you're walking past a crowd of like whispering people or laughing kids and like it's the popular group and you get self-conscious, that was happening in a vacuum in my development just at school.
Yeah.
Or like maybe at like the basketball game we would all go to if it went bad or something. I don't know. But it was happening in school-based, like school peer-based hangouts. But now kids developmentally, like that social setting continues on their phone after they leave that building. And so that self-conscious stuff is playing out instead of a crowd talking about you and whispering you're walking by. It's social media, like, let's leak this 12-year-old girl's nudes because she did that. And now, like, that's out there forever.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh my God, like it's times 10 what the brain is supposed to be handling at that time.
And
you're literally carrying around that whispering crowd with you everywhere.
Well, that's the thing is
pocket.
you never have that time to decompress, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't have to if you don't want to because it's always right there. It's like
and
you're
again,
never
and you can't.
obviously
and you feel like you can't do that because then you're not going to
And
be
it
prepared.
does become something you depend on because you do get dopamine when you're scrolling. And have you ever seen The Social Dilemma?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which
You're bringing that up a lot. Like I'm glad you've seen it.
Yeah. And it's like,
I know.
it gets a little conspiracy theory in my opinion.
In the end,
yeah.
I stopped watching.
But what I was about to say was also about to get really conspiracy theory because before you came out, my next phrase, tip of my tongue about to come out of my mouth was going to be like, it's like you're never really alone, right?
Yep.
Which is very conspiracy theory. But
it's not a conspiracy theory. That is true.
It's not, but it's like, well, it's, and again, but this is why it becomes tough, and Andrew touched on it, is because, like, I'm right on the gap of that too, right? Like, the entire time I was in high school, Twitter was a thing.
Okay.
But it
existed.
Yeah. I think, like, but it didn't get used. It wasn't,
it wasn't necessarily.
It was like, you want to know what was, I don't know if either of you will get, but like, does anyone remember iFunny?
Oh my God, yes.
Man.
Like, it was iFunny Twitter, right? Because I lived on I'm talking, talk about not being able to disconnect.
Right.
I'm talking up till the wee hours of the morning, just scrolling meme after meme after meme on iFunny. And like, it was like, it was the best thing ever. It was hysterical. So it wasn't like it is now, but you have to, once it is what it is now, and like, and again, there's pros and cons to it because it can be such a good aid, but at the same time, one of the things that should be like mixed into being taught how to use it is being taught how to separate yourself from it. Like, how do you disconnect? And I'll admit, when people are like, oh, you shouldn't go on your phone for like the first hour of your morning. I'm like, fuck that. Like,
I know, me
too. The second I wake up, I'm like, and this is going to sound bad. Well, so, a lot of people say, I'm ranting again, but they'll say like, don't wake up 20 minutes before you have to leave, right?
Yes.
Wake up, give yourself time, because I'm big, like I shower every morning, I eat breakfast every morning.
You have a routine.
Yeah, exactly.
Which you should.
Yeah, stapled to that routine.
That's an anchor.
But I wake up early, not to like, do it, but like I'll wake up early because that 15 minutes extra that I give myself before I decide to get up and start showering, like I like that 15 minutes because I like to go and I like to look at scores and I like to read stupid shit and I like to, and I know people say that's not good for you, but at the same time, that's what I do in the morning. That's just what it is. I'm not going to probably change that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the benefits outweigh the cost in that specific example. For me, I don't know where the data or the science is coming from when that rule of thumb comes out, because it seems like every time I hear it, it's a different amount of time.
Yeah.
But like I meditate through Headspace, and that's on my phone, and so that's what I do in the morning as part of my morning routine. But like, same, it's a part of our lives. It's now embedded in it's a utility. It's a utility.
Andy, what do you think about it? Because you're not a big phone guy. Well, you are. I mean, you have to run all this nonsense, but like individually, you've never been a huge.
No, yeah. I mean, I do.
You tweeted off our Twitter account today for the first time in like months.
Yeah.
By the way, good.
I had to get out there.
It was the stupidest tweet ever. I'm just
Yeah,
kidding.
man.
Well, you know what? Can I? Sorry, this
Wait,
is gonna.
what was the tweet?
This is gonna completely
Oh,
take us off the
so-
rails.
oh, God,
but
it's
can
so
I tell you
stupid.
what I thought it was? And
Oh,
I gave
no.
you way too much credit. I really thought it was gonna be a Rickroll or like a link to our. It was like an actual clip of the Johnny Depp like podcast thing from the.
No,
or was
the
it,
trial.
It was the trial, but
I
you
was
called
like, Johnny
it a podcast.
Depp's new podcast is crazy.
Yeah.
Because he's getting laughs on that drive. Like,
Yeah.
He's shameless.
Yeah.
It is funny.
But well, I thought it was gonna. I was hoping it was either actually a link to our YouTube channel
Yeah.
to plug us, or it was gonna be like a real Rickroll, like which nobody has done in every like 6 to 8 months. There's one like real Rickroll that exists, and it's like the greatest thing.
I've rickrolled some people. I'll tell you after who I rickrolled. I'm not gonna. But I only put the link in there is because I thought it would like show up.
It does,
Like
if
a
you
preview
don't-
of it?
Yeah, it would if you.
if I did it right.
Yeah.
Whatever. See, that's I don't know what I'm doing.
Did you share the video or did you copy the
I
link?
copied it.
Yeah,
I
you got to
copied
share
link.
the video.
Okay, got it. Well, the best laid plans have flaws in them.
Yeah.
And that's but yeah, I use the phone a lot for this
Right.
and everything, so a lot of times, and I do look at it first thing in the morning, and usually the first thing I'll look at is stuff related to the show and like the shows, both shows that we run here and that sort of thing, and then try and maybe look at something funny, or maybe like weird animal videos as well.
Yeah.
Like,
Nice.
No, I
But,
definitely. But that's the
let's
thing,
do
though.
podcasts,
But
but when I get home, like,
sorry.
I literally throw it across the room. Like, I don't want it near me. I don't want it physically near me.
When did that become a thing, or was it always that way for you?
Like, whom?
Like just that, like adverse or aversion.
I was always super nervous about being, because like with the introduction of cell phones came the sentence, "This is something you can get addicted to." And if you looked around, that's what
okay.
you saw.
Yeah.
And then just,
The good thing is I don't have an
wanna be.
addictive personality, so I'm like,
is that a joke?
that was a joke.
Okay,
yeah,
thought so.
thanks. No, I appreciate it not going over your head.
I was gonna say, I was like, you don't need an addictive
Yeah.
personality.
Yeah, no, that was me just joshing.
Yeah, no, I mean that's good that you were introduced to it that way in that context.
But you want to know what else though? And this, like, I think benefited you is, like, you read a lot. A lot of people don't. Some like have started to since, but when we were, there wasn't a lot of people that read a ton. That, I mean, maybe not my friends because they're all idiots, but like I didn't.
No,
I was
that's
never like
true.
spending time. You know me, obviously. I was never like spending time reading. So if I wasn't doing something, once we had iPod touches, right? It was like, oh, I'm not doing anything. I might as well play fucking Doodle Jump.
Oh, Doodle Jump.
Oh,
Yeah. Which, by the way,
That game was great.
I
Oh,
downloaded Flappy Bird again. Recently. No, wait. Is Flappy Bird? No, what's
That's
Angry
Teeny
Birds.
Wings?
Types.
No,
Angry Birds.
I'm talking Teeny Wings. Does anybody remember the game Teeny Wings?
I've never heard
No.
of it.
Oh, sick. So it was like you had this bird, and there was like it was like hills like this,
Yeah.
and you had to like hold down the screen, and the bird would nosedive, and you ramped off the hills, and you let go, and then like you would go. It was a game.
Yeah.
Um,
No, it's just like iDogs or whatever. You were just, what the fuck is it
Do you
called?
know what Teeny Wings is? People out there know Teeny Wings. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
So the other day, I was like, I'm gonna fucking download Teeny Wings, see if it still exists or something like it. And I downloaded it, and they completely changed the game, and it sucks now. It's horrible. It used to be like you could see how long you could go, kind of like Flappy Bird or all those. Like it was like you wanted to beat your high score, and now it's like, I don't know, it's useless. I gotta delete it. It's just taking up space. But I still like do hop on to play it every so often, but it's not like it used to be.
That's a
RIP.
rule. That's a rule I have is I won't download games.
It's probably
Yeah,
I
that
won't
was.
do games.
Yep, that's actually, man, I forgot that was a rule for myself initially as well. I remember what I would do though is like, because when iPhone games were big when I was in like 7th or 8th grade or something is when they really started going.
Mm-hmm.
I had
Paper
the
toss.
old iPod Touch.
Oh, paper toss
That's
action.
right. So
Yeah.
I tried to avoid it for the longest time, and then what I would do, because like it looked really fun, I would download it and I'd play it and then I'd delete it, but I'd like re-download it every day and like go back.
Yeah,
to
so you're
it.
just wasting your own time at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I never See, I was always like we never played video games growing up.
No.
Ever. Like we didn't have a gaming system until we were
Remember when we the Wii, when we got the Wii, we convinced our parents that
it's
like,
healthy.
You move around. That was
That was
genius.
the buy-in.
Yeah.
Genius. That was
Seriously.
such a
Nintendo.
huge, exactly, man. They really
Marketing.
fucking know.
Mhm.
But yeah, our dad won a free Xbox 360, like close to when they came out, and he hid it from us in his trunk for months. He's like, you guys can't. But it wasn't just the Xbox 360. He won it at like this work thing. There was a rock band competition at this like conference he was at, and his band won it, and the grand prize was an Xbox 360 with all the rock band shit, like the guitars and the two guitars and the drum set
and the
microphone, and he kept all of that in his trunk for months.
You two knew it was there for
No.
months?
No.
Oh, okay.
I remember going into the garage one day and
there was rock. It was an Xbox, and I was like,
what is
holy
this?
shit.
He
And
just
then-
was like, I don't know.
No, he was like, I don't want them going. He was like, this stuff is bad.
So he knew it had addictive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For
The
sure.
problem
Yeah.
is though, is all it didn't. Well, for me at least, it didn't prolong me becoming somebody that played
Me
video
neither.
games. It just made me
No.
inevitably a lot worse at
Yes.
certain video games.
Me too.
Right.
Like, I play them enough now to where but I was horrible for a long, long time at video games because I just never played them. Like people, so many people play. Like I remember, like guys I knew, and this is crazy to think back on, like skipping school on days that like new games came out to stay home and play the new games. Like I didn't. Like,
I know
what?
adults who do that. They don't go to work on the new
Yeah.
day.
See,
but,
you
like-
know what though? I think it's almost better when it's adults than
Yes.
kids, because adults can consciously make that decision
Yes.
on their own and be like, I work and I'm going to spend my own money on this and I'm going to do this. Whereas as a child,
Interesting.
you're like, you and probably, no offense to parents that have done this, but they're like, I'm going to let my child forego his day's worth of
Yeah.
education.
The value placed on it is
Yeah,
different.
to stay home and murder
or they're
zombies
at
all day.
work and,
Yeah, and
they don't know, which
Which-
is also problematic.
Which was something that like we never got away with though, because by the time I was in high school and like would have even thought to do that, it was like if you weren't there by first period, they friggin' alerted everybody in your bloodline. Like he's not in school today.
Everybody in your
Yeah.
It is different though for kids now because like back in the day, I think the idea that still a lot of people have of America is like kids get out of school and they go, okay, we gotta go. But they go. Do we have to go right now?
Yeah, just about.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Well, we can
I'm gonna
wrap
be
up.
late.
That's okay.
Yeah.
But
I didn't mean to cut you off.
It's just a different way
mid-sentence.
for kids. Like their friends, instead of playing on, their friends don't live on the block. They live
The
on
playground.
minigames. That's a social. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I am
Another
sorry to
great-
cut us
great
off.
reference.
It was I didn't even realize we were going this long. We were
Yeah.
just kind of diving into it. Thank you so much for coming on and talking about this.
course.
It's something that, like, every once in a while we kind of tread lightly into, but we do keep it light. Probably not for the better, probably for our own sake. But when we get to sit down and really talk about it and let people hear about it, and hopefully people take this for what it is and understand what we're talking about here, and it'll only do good things for you.
Yeah, I do not beat around the bush. I'm not Dr. Phil, and I feel like these are things that are worth talking about. So yeah, I'm always here to be blunt.
Where can people find you and all that?
Yep. So I have a website. It's called modelbehavior716.com, and really like that has my contact info, also my Instagram, Falisha LC. And if anyone's interested in learning more about life coaching or reading any of my articles on mental health and music or life coaching or books I've read that are helpful with tips or whatever it is, that's on my website.
Okay, great. Yeah, we'll toss links to that in the episode description
Thank
and
you.
stuff. Thanks a lot for being here, Felicia. We
Yeah.
really
Thank
appreciate
you
it.
so
It was
much.
really
Here.
cool
Yeah,
talking to you.
it was a blast.
Thank
I
you.
wish that tonight of all nights I didn't have to run. But yes, thank you, Andy. I love you.
I love you too. Let's get out of here. Thanks, folks.